So this chapter 2F is on comparing proportions. So you'll learn to convert between fractions, decimals, and percentage. And knowing how to do that skill, you'll learn how to compare proportions. So a proportion is a part-to-whole relationship with a context. It's represented as a decimal, a percent, or a fraction. So for example, you might say something like 50% of the class are females. Or you might say a half of the class are females. Or you might say 0.5 of the class are female. So these are all different ways of representing proportion through a percentage, through a decimal, and as a fraction. So the first thing you need to know how to do is be able to convert between fractions, decimals, and percentage. And this is a skill that you should already have in the back of your mind. So a fraction into a percent, basically you need to make sure that this fraction is equivalent to something over 100 because a percent is always out of 100. And for a decimal, 100% is the same thing as saying 1.0. So you have already an idea of how to do this skill, pause the video and complete the table. If you have no idea what to do, continue watching how I do the first one. 6 out of 20 is the same thing as saying something out of 100. I need it to be out of 100 because I need this percentage. So 20 times 5 gives me 100, meaning I have to do the same thing to the top. So therefore, 30 out of 100 is the same thing as saying 30% because a percent is always out of 100. Therefore, as a decimal, automatically, because it's 30%, same thing as saying 3 tenths or 30 hundredths, we write 0.30 hundredths because this is the same thing as saying 30 hundredths. Now, knowing this idea, please fill in the rest of the table. Pause. So 85% is the same thing as saying 0.85. If, for example, this said 7%, just as an idea, this would be the same thing as saying 0.07 because 7% is 7 hundredths. And the way we see it here, this is 7 hundredths. And then from there, to write this as a fraction, 85% is the same thing as saying 85 hundredths, and now you just have to simply simplify it. And when we divide by 5, because 5 is a common factor of 85 and 100, we get 17/20. Then finally, we have a decimal of 1.25. Remember, 1 whole represents 100%, 0.25 represents 25%, so it's 125%. Now to represent this as a fraction, let's actually move it over here. 1 whole doesn't change anything. 25% is the same thing as saying 25 hundredths. We just simplify that down into 1 1/4. Now, we are going to compare these proportions. So in example A, Leon scores 34 out of 40 on his math summative, 20 out of 25 on his history summative, and 76% on his French summative. Which summative did he score the best? So my advice for a problem like this, is if you really want to compare these proportions, it's best to make them all into the same. So meaning all of them should be percentages, all of them should be decimals, or all of them need to be a fraction with a common denominator. So at this time, pause the video and complete A and B. There's many ways to do it. I'm going to convert these all to percentage. 20 out of 25 is the same as saying 80 out of 100 because I times it by 4 because I needed 100 in order to make my percentage. This is 80%. 34 out of 40. Now, you can't get straight to 100, but you know what? I'm going to simplify this and make this out of 20. So 34 divided by 2 is 17. Now, I want to make 17 out of 20 into a percentage, so I'm going to turn this out of 100. That means I multiply this by 5, and that should give me 85 out of 100, which is the same as saying 85%. So So Liam did best on his math, then his history, then his French. In this problem, I'm going to convert these all into a decimal. So I've typed these into my calculator, and these were the numbers I received: 0.3, 0.35, and 0.4. Now keep in mind, this is 0.35. In order to reasonably compare decimals, you need to make sure that if this has two numbers behind a decimal, I'm going to do the same thing. And anything after a decimal, you can add a zero harmlessly. So you can add 1,000 zeros if you want, and it won't change the value of the number. And this one will be 0.40. So when I really compare these, we will say that, and the question was, which category of music had the fewest listeners? The fewest meaning the least. The fewest was this one right here, which is indie music. And that's it.